Okay, good morning again to everyone. Let's eat differently. It's something that is going to be really imposing onto us with which type of agriculture, which innovation. It is a subject of this roundtable. We're going to have wonderful speakers, have different points of view with different activities. Zohra, Bouamra-Mechemache, you are a researcher at the Toulouse School of Economics, and your work is really based onto the agriculture and food chain. Cécile Béliot, who is joining us via video conferencing, remote conferencing. She's a member of the Bell consortium, Thierry, Babybel, etc. You always have shown your conviction on an accountable capitalism, and you have always shown your commitment for vegetable Babybel, and you want to be a leader of healthy snacking, finger food. We have here Thierry, who is chairman of InVivo, which is a second agricultural cooperative in Europe. And you're launching a new concept of food, local food, near your home. You're going to explain to us. And Antoine Boulay, who is chairman of the Institute of the World Good, Common Goods, and who fights for the really growing industry. So why do we need to eat differently? What is the carbon print of agriculture? Because I hear very different things, 17, 30%. So what is the criteria used? How can we pollute the planet? We talked about breeding earlier. Why do we need to eat differently? It's because we need to preserve the planet, but also to preserve our health. And to do so, the whole of the food chain, the whole system, from the agriculture to the consumer, going through industrials and all the big distribution, because big supermarkets, because we have a speaker here who can tell us more about it, will have a role to play in order to achieve those objectives. To be more precise, agriculture in France represents 11% of CO2 emission. We're talking about only agricultural activities. It's 17% in France. If we add to this the use of energy, we go to 19% to emission of greenhouse effect gases. And then if we really take into account the whole chain up to the consumption and to dejections, which are not recycled, we have up to really 20%, 90%, transportation including, etc. So the agriculture, it's really the second sector with the transportation and building industry and the industry. We talked about waste earlier. If you had waste to the agricultural production, there are many, many big differences between agricultural productions and what we eat. If I give you the example of the impact of in CO2 for 100 grams of proteins consumed, whatever it is, whether it's beef, red meat, it's going to be 10 times more impacting than poultry. That is going to be 10 times more impacting than fruit or vegetable. So you need to have a look at the whole of your diet and identify what elements will allow you to lower and reduce our carbon print. 56% of carbon emission are linked to the cattle breeding with methane. So from an environmental point of view, it is important to reduce our consumption of red meat. Does it produce just as much industrial with methane? Does the industrial breeding, cattle breeding in fields or industrial cattle breeding, does it have the same carbon print? Breeding systems are very different. You not just have intensive, non-intensive, organic, non-organic. It's all very complex. So what is important is to have two main elements, which are: do we have systems with herbs and other systems with a feed, special feed for cattle to feed, or according to the different mix, it depends also that we know that deforestation that is necessary to give them cereals depends whether they are grazing or not too. But if you look at organic food, if you look at organic food, which has an impact on local pollution for air and water, it can have negative effects too, because the yield of organic is lower. So in terms of finished product, the emission for carbon will be higher for organic product than from a non-organic product. So it is better for your health and for the local environment, but not necessarily for greenhouse effect gases. So you need to analyze situations and find and understand different balances and antagonisms. Cécile, Béliot, you are very committed in organic production, because behind all your vache qui rit and Bell cheese, there's the milk industry. What are your objectives? How do you change things? How do you change your working methods? Well, good morning. We don't have the sound. Oh. Did you open your mic? We'll come back to you in 2 minutes. I'm really sorry about this. Sometimes with remote conferencing it happens. On the organic products, you have lots of experience behind you. What is the situation today? Ecologists demand a organic agriculture. You have seen farmers going to organic farming, and then they are going back to normal farming. What counts today is the price for the consumer. With inflation that is ahead of us, with purchasing power is very important. So you need to resolve the equation between quality and price, and the organic is coming out of this equation of quality and price. I'm not saying that we should oppose agricultural systems, and organic can exist with local short circuits shops. It all depends on the local potential. If locally we can be competitive doing organic products and do organic, but if you push farmers into areas where they don't have the right climate, it's a suicide, and it's not sustainable. So you need to be smart. That means understanding the agronomic potential of each area. We are using the whole potential of European farm today. So you're telling us about tomorrow's agriculture that will not look like today's agriculture, with robotics, with tractors that will adapt to different lands. It is the case already. We have all the technology ready. Now we need to change things and chains so that we can really speed up this sustainable farming. We are in a logic situation today. I'm talking about big cultures, big crops. They are really if we get into a rotation of crops, cereals, oleaginous, and different types of cereals, you regenerate soils, and then you can contribute in a favorable way to a feed chain. food chain. So then there is also the fertilizers, which is not green. So how can you change this? So that's really the challenge. It's hydrogen. We talked about leguminous plants earlier. So this type of farming can be very competitive. It can show that you can have new products that are solutions to the planet because they commit on a very small carbon print. With the right price. For organic, it's only about 10% of population that can pay organic. There's a lot of marketing also. We have come away from normal organic, organic marketing went too far, and maybe the consumers were a bit fed up with that. We have big brands, if they do organic for real organic people, they just do it for marketing reasons. If you look at the milk industry, they went into organic, that is financed by our taxes. And so we have too many milk farmers doing organic, and we need to deconvert certain farms into traditional milk farms because there is no market, because it's too expensive, and they say organic is fine, but I can't afford it. So we give a sustainable farming approach that is really committed to carbon neutrality, to really look into the for sustainable farming. It is possible today. We have more than 1,000 farms today who are working on this model. We can produce more on a sustainable manner, reducing the using of inputs. We have lots of figures. In 5 years, depends of the years, but at the end of the day, you can increase the revenue of the farmer by 7% and reduce the input by 33%. It's a farm-to-fork system that was launched. And we need to really look again, revise because of the Ukrainian crisis. Now we have Cécile Béliot again. What is your strategy with the transformation? Sorry, there's a telephone ringing here. I hope you can hear me now. Yes, we can hear you very well. We're sorry about what happened earlier. It happens. What I wanted to share with you, it's a very strong condition. We really are the moment for food, the really a key point. I'm talking about food industry at large, farmers, producers, and consumers. From the farm to the fork. We don't have that much time to change trajectory and climate trajectory. We have what? About 10 years. If tomorrow you can have a major impact on your carbon emissions, first thing you should change is the way you eat. And we all agree with this. We're not talking about facts. We're saying that scientifically there's an abstract from the Eat Lancet that shows the planetary health diet. And it presents things very, very well. It doesn't come from Indians who don't have access to animal protein today, and they don't have everything they need in terms of nutriments and nutrition so that their children will grow correctly. It comes from G20 countries, from rich countries. This is where we need to act. When you see the G20, we have to really, we are obliged to review the way we feed ourselves and the way we deal with things from an agricultural point of view. Agriculture today is really the main issue of climate. It's really the key, the solution, and one of the most important solutions to climate changes. If we can really swap this and we change this with new practices of regenerative farming systems, it has been proven. We have the data. We have been validated. We have the data. We know it. And we have methods that will really decrease carbon. And second element, what do we put in our plate? Half of the plate should be fruits and vegetables. 15% should be protein from vegetable protein. Then cereals, wholemeal cereal, because we need them. And then the rest of the plate should be fat, vegetable fat that we need. But it doesn't mean that there is no room for milk products. Because milk products are good thanks to protein, calcium, and nutriments they supply. We know it's part of the essential elements we need. What is important is the balance. Why do I have to play a role in this? If I don't help my fellow citizens to be aware of this and to find brands they know in consumption habits they have, and to have alternatives to what they consume, they will not change their way of eating. This is my challenge. This is why in your research lab you have created cheeses that are vegetable cheeses, so that you can change things a little bit at a time. You put also vegetables, apparently, in your portions. I'll give you examples. There are innovations that have come out onto the market. What I give to people is not just cheese, Baby Bell. It's a portion of eating well, and children find it very great because it's red and it's funny to open the shell. But inside this Baby Bell, you can put milk, you can put a vegetable alternative. We have launched in UK and in United States 100% vegetable Baby Bell. And I have launched it with vache qui rit. We have also a milk part, then I put leguminous, then I put spices, carrot puree, and I can do a vache qui rit with carrot, and 40% of my vache qui rit will be carrot. And in the United States, you have lenses and a bit of milk, because milk is also good for you. Everything is a question of balance. Our fourth, we talk about lentils too. Antoine Boulay, you have a passion for breeding. You have spent your life in rural areas, in countryside. You know this world very well. What really climate and resilience imposes a meal a week in canteen at school. So we should really eat more vegetable rather than meat. The Institute of Common Goods has many interests, like agronomy. The main issue for all these topics and agriculture in general is that you have lots of given ideas. 15,000 of water to do 1 kilo of beef, of cattle. It's 20 to 50 liters, because when beef are grazing in fields, 95% of this water, it's figures from the National Institute of Agronomic Studies, it's natural water. They said that breeding is really a net contributor to CO2, but I need to challenge this, because you can't just summarize breeding through the methane emission, because they ruminate and they create methane, because it's linked to 4 to 1,000. What does it mean? It means that soils are really stocking carbon. What does it mean? Photosynthesis, it's really the opposite to emission of greenhouse effect gases. But our friend said it's bullshit. They're right, because I'm going to tell you about bullshit, actually. I'm going to tell you about real bullshit. What it means is that the field is going to stock carbon. It stocks about 80 tons of CO2 per year. And cereal field or leguminous field will stock 50 tons per hectare per year. So if you analyze the whole of the contribution of breeding to greenhouse effect gases emission, you need to take into account this without taking into account its impact on biodiversity, on landscapes, on jobs, because with the cereal field you have lots of people working for breeding, for cattle breeding. You have lots of things that are happening behind processes with the slaughtering processes. So there is this ideological opposition. As Pascal Canfin said, saying no to breeding. You can say no because you're vegan, because it's ideological, because it's a religious or spiritual idea. But from the global warming issues, if you have a food that doesn't have any animal protein, you need to have to eat iodous complement. You can't talk about bullshit. You can't have organic farming. Thierry Blandinières tells me, yes, I am representing the organic industry. On organic, if you don't have bullshit, all the organic dejection from you can't have this anymore. Because you need the manure from the cattle breeding. So when you talking about this topic, you need to take into account the whole picture. Farming is part of the solution, and I come back to this 4 per thousand. Why do we say 4 per thousand? If soils would stock 4 per thousand more, 0.4% more carbon, in the today's farming processes, it will compensate the greenhouse effect gases. We're not talking 20%. We're talking about 0.4%. It's a question of soiling, stocking carbon on the soil. It is a vegetable cover. Also, we're talking about living on this soil to leave them. Leaf covers. We're talking about it's good for microbiology of the farmer. You should leave them. I don't use my tractor anymore, and then you have lots of animals who are working inside, and all the worms that are helping. Can't say we're all going to die, we're going to have food anymore. Agriculture is part of the solution, and it is a very good piece of news.
Well, I'm not an expert in agronomy, but we know that there is real heterogeneity in green gas emissions. I'd like to insist on the fact that if we eat meat, we are going to emit gases. We cannot avoid it. Of course, even when living, you do emit greenhouse gases. The question is how to do. Oh, sorry, because someone is speaking but not using a mic, so we cannot translate. We cannot translate if the speakers don't use a mic. Sorry. So what gentleman is saying is really interesting. The speaker is saying, well, when you say, when you talk of agronomy, it's interesting, but be careful. Let's not forget the issue of carbon capture and storage by meadows and pasture. It is a fact. It is a fact. I'm not aggressive. Let's not only focus on meat consumption. The gentleman is still speaking without a mic. Cannot be translated, sorry. I'd like to add that there is a scientific consensus on the following point. Meat does emit a lot of greenhouse gases. Then you have several ways of consuming meat, and we also can admit and accept that pasture meadows play a part in the biodiversity. Let's go back to what happened with the COVID crisis. Greenhouse gases decreased. Of course, this is due to the decrease in growth during the whole COVID crisis. But we also witnessed another emerging phenomenon, a real crave for local products, and with an alliance between technology and farming. And I'm going to ask you whether local production consumption is the solution, is to become the solution. Well, this is a real issue. All this is a real issue. Otherwise, anyway, we would be bored if there was no debate. But let's not forget that we have to feed 10 billion inhabitants on our planet Earth. And when looking at what's going on in Ukraine with the war and the real pressure on wheat and the soaring prices of wheat consequent to this war and impact on nutrition and food supply for African countries, even if we're in the process of developing new farming branches, well, these countries will have to pay much more, 400, 500 euros per ton to buy wheat, for instance. And let's not forget that riots in Tunisia started because the price of wheat had increased. So we have got a real obstacle there, and it should have an impact on our discussions, debate. What we are saying today has been hackneyed in the last 10, 15 years. The local, global approach. Well, locally, we are doing our utmost to encourage and support our local producers. When producing locally, we can develop a distribution network. Jardiland, for instance, is a garden center, but also works together with local producer with a view to sell these local products in their garden centers. And 20% of our turnover is obtained thanks to local organic products, local sustainable products, and not an organic avocados imported from South America, for instance. So the point is to develop a purchasing platform to encourage the production and sale of these local organic products. And we have levied high sums of money in terms of several hundreds of thousands euros to work in this direction. So we have to be in a position to fund all these changes, and we are working together with investors to precisely work in the long term. But this is going to account for 10% of French nutrition, food habits. And we also have to revisit conventional farming. We are ready to stop fertilizers and chemistry, but we have to find the right solutions. If we do modify farming, shall we be able to do away with products and proteins, for instance, imported from the other part of the other side of the world? Maïsadour, for instance, is replanting soya in the region to feed the cattle, for instance, and to produce meat. This is a real challenge, of course, a major issue. But that means turning from output to profitability. It means turning from output to profitability. That means producing less milk, but that means less fuel expenses, hence better profitability in the end. This is, or let's say, let's turn from yield to profitability. That would be the exact move to take. And let's say, too, that production is evolving. In 50 years' time, things will be totally different, of course. What about the share of local products and consumption? What about the impact on climate? Let me go back to what was said by one of the speakers concerning local products and consumption. Producing vegetal proteins or plant proteins would mean less soya imports. But that means thinking in terms of plot allotments, location of plots, and associated prices and associated quality. Going back to local products and consumptions, over half of the emissions are due to breeding, and the other half is due to the use of nitrogen fertilizers. Producing locally with chemistry won't really change the picture altogether. Of course, we will have an impact on the transport part, which accounts for a small fraction of all these emissions, but that's all. And I would also like to add another point. It all depends on the consumer's preferences. We touched upon prices. Prices play a major part. You mean that price, health, and environment rank first, second, and third in consumers' choices. So first price, second health, third environment. When preparing this round table, you told me that you were environmental friendly. You work on small portions, individual portions, to avoid waste. But someone on the internet says, well, it has an impact on packaging, and doesn't it increase waste in terms of packaging? Is it better than bulk? Well, we are working on the packaging aspect. We are going to have other propositions. We have the day-by-day supermarkets offering bulk products. We are also conducting tests together with the Intermarché supermarkets. Well, 80% of the packaging is made of paper by 2025. They will all be recycled or biodegradable. What does it mean? It means that we are not only working in countries where recycling is really possible. We have to take this into account. So you can use the packaging made of natural flex, use it, put it into your compost, you dump it into the compost, and 48 hours later it will have fully disappeared. So you can use all these solutions in order to improve the situation. Now, going back to the major CO2 challenge, 70% of the impact is due to farming, to the dairy production. So we have to change farming practices altogether. We know that protein autonomy and rotation in terms pasture rotation can be quite helpful. And the non-use of genetically modified organisms must also be really highlighted. We are, of course, in the process of further developing agrotechnology methods. We are replanting, etc., etc. We know it's a long way to go to change the farming practices, to have a more regenerative type of farming. But we have to work, and it's a long way to go, as I just said, but we have to weigh on it. And we must forget food waste, but we must leave behind us food waste, which can amount to 30% in some cases. We must try and strike a balance between waste and sustainable packaging, let's say. Well, time is running, so just a few minutes now to conclude. What should we have on our plates? Something good for our health, but something compatible with our common good. And what do you expect from public authorities? Cécile said it would be essential to make people more aware of all these issues. How do you see things? Commercials on TV, special meals in school canteens, nursing homes, etc. I start with Jérôme, who is highly disruptive. How do you see things? But let's be very short. There is no natural human food without animal contribution. Less perhaps, but still some. There won't be any organic farming without farming as such. I mean, just take this for granted. Now, what about public policies? We have to support demand. We have to support organic demand. There are major public health campaigns on tobacco, on road safety. We could have some campaigns on organic meals. I mean, MPs could eat organic on some occasions, you know, that's feasible. So we have to work on the 4 to 1,000 I described before. And we also have to admit some farmers are under very heavy pressure. Even for all that, they are quite willing to contribute to the general overall common good. And let's not forget that farming brings a major contribution to the general balance. Starvation is a real plague in Egypt at the moment. Are suffering from very severe hunger, for instance. Well, What about our eating habits tomorrow? What about your recommendations and your expectations concerning public authorities? Our central theme is the common good. The French farm and the European farm are part of our heritage, so we have to maintain them and to protect them. This is true for us, but this is true for our African friends. This doesn't mean that we must not shift gear or transform things. We have to label what is sustainable, and we have to be able to fund the necessary transitions. Now, we have to be able to guarantee 150 euros per hectare to fund transition over a period of 5 years. Why? Because a farmer is running a risk during these 5 years by opting for leguminous products instead of, I don't know, wheat or barley. So we have, if you want to change scale, you need public policies ready to fund the farmers. And the average figure is 150 euros, as I just said. And if farmers contribute up to 50 euros will come from the carbon credit, and 50 euros will be funded by the new common agricultural policy. And by so doing, we will change the French farm. I don't know if we lost Cécile Béliot. Is she still with us? Yes, she is. So, Cécile, you have the last word, especially on public authorities. Well, and public policies, sorry. I'm fed up with prices. I think we should mention the value, people's health, planet's health, people's well-being, and animal welfare. If we go on and go on repeating that what matters most is the price, we have to do away with this. We have to educate people. That means schools, canteens, nursing homes have to play a part in this in order to reach a balance. So I think that more measures should be introduced to get the right information in order to buy the right food and to eat in a proper manner. And eating healthy is quite possible, but let's not forget that today it's difficult because many people have to pay more to eat healthy and to eat in a sustainable manner. So we have to protect those who cannot yet afford the sustainable and healthy food. So let's stop talking about price. Last concluding words. Are we going to eat in the future? What about the ideal meal? Should we impose vegetarian meals everywhere in Parliament, in school and Parliament canteens, in nursing homes canteens, etc., etc.? And how to support all this? I mean, I need 1 hour. Well, as an economist, I would say price matters quite a lot. And when mentioning global change and nutrition, we must take into account the price factor too. I looked at tax policies to see what it could do in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, we need a wide portfolio of public policies if we want to change our food habits. And we have the right information, we have all the labels, protected origin labels, etc., etc. We also have taxes on sweet drinks, for instance, sweet soft drinks. We realize that it could help, it could have an impact. So we should really delve into all these tools and to see how to act on the environmental policy by so doing. And beyond educating the population, labels can also help, I am convinced. But educational messages in schools, in catering, in schools in general, can help and change the mindset. We all know that there should be real complementarity between all these tools to have an impact both on the environment and on health. That means a deep, thorough understanding of all the features and all elements. Thanks very much. I hope you are going to have a healthy meal.